Didn't I tell you that we just passed a law that says you have to vote on fee increases? So if they do this, obviously it has to go to a vote of the people. So what are you worried about?
Well, they're just ignoring it. I mean, just 100% ignoring it, pretending like that didn't happen. And I mean, when the people spoke loud and clear on 117, the politicians are not listening. And we're out there right now encouraging people to say, call your elected officials, remind them what was passed, tell them to do the right thing. And they want to use these, legal gymnastics where it's like, well, if we do this plus that, add this, and we think we're on sound legal footing to avoid the vote. And the reason why is because they say the voters will say no. And it's like, then don't do it.
Don't let this month delay in the start of the Colorado legislative session fool you. It's going to be a wild ride in 2021. And one of those guys who's going to be out there fighting on it, Jesse Mallory from Colorado's chapter of Americans for Prosperity.
Thanks for having me.
First of all, the chapter, is that the right term? I know AFP has chapter.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Really? So
35 chapters.
You're just like the Lions Club.
Just
really.
like them. Just like them.
Give it a quick definition of Americans for Prosperity.
Sure,
if you're into politics, you know who the organization.
Sure, we're a grassroots organization that's focused on helping people identify barriers, be they policies, be they politicians, in order to address them so that people can improve their lives, and educating folks on the policies that, John, you're a busy guy. Folks are running around with their families. They're not watching what's going on in the Capitol, but that's what we do to make sure people are aware of what's happening.
That's a very beautiful way to put it. But what you failed to put it is we work to keep government under control.
Absolutely.
So we're usually against tax increases. We're usually holding politicians to their promises to protect the taxpayer bill of rights. And they don't like that. First of all, thanks to AFP. Last year, you guys really carried a lot of water for my tax cut 116 and our companion.
We're happy to.
And a companion piece, which was 117, which is a vote on fees.
Yep.
And out of all the things that went south, or went left, I should say, on the ballot, those two didn't. And I think AFP was just one of the great partners in that.
We had a great coalition. And when I hear people talk about the blue state of Colorado and the progressive state of Colorado, and I said, see how they feel about taxes?
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't want higher taxes, and they don't want the government adding more fees to them.
Yeah, it's like, we want conservative policy, we just don't want conservatives.
Yeah,
there's a real disconnect there.
There is.
So 117 said if there's going to be a new fee, you have to let the voters vote on it. And because the fees have been used as a way to get around Tabor. Tabor obviously says if you want to raise taxes, you vote. But if it's a fee, the Colorado Supreme Court says you don't have to. And after that ruling, it all goes crazy. So now the problem with fees is over. It's done. We don't have to worry about the legislature ever again playing that game of raising our taxes by calling it a fee. Yeah, correct?
One would think. And
one would think.
What's interesting is that that passed in November. Here we are in January. And if you watch 9 News, if you read the Denver Business Journal, Colorado Sun, they're talking about, well, we're going to add fees on your gasoline purchases. One of the proposals is fee per gallon, which is just like the gas tax. They even acknowledge just like the gas tax, and because it's a tax. We all know it's a tax. They know it's a tax, but they're going to call it a fee. They want to add fees to deliveries and Uber and Lyft and all these other things. And their argument is, if you're using the roads, you need to pay this. And you run into people occasionally who say, well, gosh, I ride a bike, or I walk. I don't. This doesn't impact me. It's like wrong, because the cost of services go up, the cost of groceries go up. Low-income Coloradans who aren't able to go out and buy sometimes weeks of groceries in advance, that they go throughout the week, they're going to keep paying more every single time because of something like this.
Yeah, when transportation costs go up, your store bill goes up, your grocery bill goes up. But let me get back to this point though. Didn't I tell you that we just passed a law that says you have to vote on fee increases? So if they do this, obviously it has to go to a vote of the people. So what are you worried about?
Well, they're just ignoring it. I mean, just 100% ignoring it, pretending like that didn't happen. And I mean, when the people spoke loud and clear on 117, the politicians are not listening. And we're out there right now encouraging people to say, call your elected officials, remind them what was passed, tell them to do the right thing. And they want to use these, legal gymnastics where it's like, well, if we do this plus that, add this, and we think we're on sound legal footing to avoid the vote. And the reason why is because they say the voters will say no. And it's like, then don't do it. If you know the people don't want it, don't do it.
I think there is a very legitimate case to be made of whether we should raise gas taxes to fix the roads, if it actually went to the roads and not to bike paths and choo-choo trains. Yeah. And if that's the case, ask us. Bring it forward. Let's have that debate, and the people will decide. But just like every time we pass a fee, whether it's a hospital provider fee or the faster fee or the mill levy freeze, the reason it's called a fee has one only purpose, is to keep it from letting voters decide.
They'd rather not have a conversation with millions of Coloradans if they can talk to 33 House members, 18 senators, and one governor. Much easier math for them.
Yeah, let's do that one more time, because that really says it all. And it's the same thing in every city council or county commission. If you have 3 commissioners, all you need to do is get 2 people to decide to raise taxes or call it a fee. In the legislature, you have to have half the House, half the Senate, plus 1, and the governor. And that's a lot different than asking 6 million people if they want to pay more in taxes. So it's a lot easier lift to raise taxes by calling it fees.
Yeah, I mean, it's easier to pay your lobbyists to go down there than it is to go out to knock on people's doors and say, hey, do you want to pay more? Because they'll ask for what? Because even when we go door to door, whether Prop CC or those other things, and we go out and we talk to people and say, well, what is it they want to do with the money? And we walk them through it, and they're like, nah, we're good. and they said, well, especially when they're like, well, there's no guarantee where the money's going to go, right? Correct. Done. Conversation's over. Because they have such a bad history.
Yeah, that's the other part of it. Fees don't always go to what they say they're going to go to. Money is fungible and doesn't always work.
The Colorado Supreme Court sure says so.
Yeah. All right, let's keep going, because understand that that's going to be a large legislative priority for you once the session gets going and all the legislators and the news people get their vaccines, and then they all can go back into the Capitol.
Yeah. Well, before we move off this, I think it's important that people watching this understand it. You may not be aware, but the legislature is actually suing you to repeal the Taxpayers' Bill of Rights. So they're using taxpayer money to sue the taxpayers of Colorado to remove taxpayer protections, and that's something that hasn't received a lot of press.
Let's explain that, because, listen, the Taxpayer Bill of Rights says something real simple. If you want to raise taxes or debt, you have to ask. You want to keep excess tax revenue instead of having it refunded. All you have to do is ask. Real simple. Politicians, doesn't matter whether they're R's or D's, hate that because it means in order to get more money to keep their constituents happy, whatever their special interests are, they either have to go out and make a case that they need more money and it's reasonable, or they have to set priorities and hack off one of their constituent groups. And so no wonder Republicans hate it when they get into office. And now there's a lawsuit saying, well, it's unconstitutional what's in the Constitution. And the state is actually putting taxpayer money to take away the right for people to vote on taxes.
The legislature is telling us right now they have no money for anything, but definitely have money for that. It's telling us that it's their right to raise taxes to the level they see fit, and that you have an election if you have a problem with it. Well, it's like, no. Taxpayers in Colorado have voted consistently over the years. They want this, so they said, okay, we'll go to the courts. We'll try to take it away.
And the courts usually agree that to all these workarounds. And that's why when it goes back to the people to see it strengthened with voting on fees, passing handily, and our tax cut voting by 16 points.
I mean, I think the message is clear, but...
No, but these are politicians. It's a whole different thing. All right, what else is on the radar screen? Because now that we have a even more progressive House, the Dems added another seat in the majority in the Senate, and we have a progressive governor. What's top of the list of stopping?
I mean, there's a lot. Two issues I'd flag. One that's working its way through the regulatory structure is Colorado's Green New Deal. They were accepting comments.
Are they actually calling it Colorado's Green New Deal?
I mean, that's how I refer to it, and even some on the left. But what's interesting about it is they were accepting comments through October of 2020 because, there's nothing else going on, definitely in front of people's mind. And what they look to do is, carving out regulations that are similar to California when it comes to emissions. And it's going to raise the cost of vehicles. It's going to make it harder to get emissions on them. And the idea is, we want these certain kind of cars off the road.
Didn't we already do that under Hickenlooper when he said we're going to go to the California standards for emissions?
Oh yeah, this is going to keep
even
that going.
more.
Yeah, and we've been pushing out some narratives on it, showing people like, hey, we don't want to follow California's path. Those people are moving here for a reason, right? And
also, getting your car over Rabbit Ears Pass or Independence Pass is a little different than doing it at sea level in California. It's a different thing. Right. And it really is weird. When you say follow California, it makes it seem like, well, we're going to do something like they've done. No.
We're literally doing what they're doing.
We're literally attaching ourselves to California. So if California governor decides to change emission standards, automatically we have to follow them.
We don't have a choice. They've removed not only Colorado voters, but Colorado elected officials who are accountable voters to people who are accountable in California. And they don't listen to their constituents. They're certainly not going to listen to us. And, if you see all those fancy new charging stations for electric vehicles, I wonder how many people realize that it's their utility bills that are helping pay for that, because Xcel did not want to gamble with their money, just their ratepayers' money.
I wrote a column on this because it pissed me off so much.
Yes, you did.
That those of us who are served by the monopoly Xcel, we have no choice. We are the ratepayers. I can't go to the other electric company. Nope. And so when they go to the PUC, which is supposed to protect our fiscal interests.
Again, they want to deal with just a handful of people, not the masses.
Five commissioners, I think it's five commissioners. On the PUC. And they say, hey, can we raise our power rates so that we can put these pretty little gas stations all over the place, fueling stations to give free fuel to cars. And so it's not that their stockholders are going to pay for it. It's not that they're going to take it out of their massive profits. They're going to hit working people with this because that's how Xcel makes their money. They make their money by building things and passing it along to working families.
And the thing that drove me crazy is when that bill was the first year we were able to stop it. And I remember sitting down with the sponsors and some of their folks, and I said, well, what's stopping you from doing this now? They said, well, we can't recover our costs. I said, okay. I was like, so they're like, well, if people don't use them, then we're out. And I'm like, that's a calculated risk, and you need to let the market decide. I was like, instead of making impoverished communities bankroll these higher-end electric vehicles that they're not driving.
What a great point. And these vehicles are usually second vehicles for largely wealthier white people.
Exactly. Douglas County, Denver County's low-income communities are bankrolling the vehicles for people in richer communities, and it's wildly unfair. But they're like, hey, this is. But
remember,
progress.
They care about poor people.
They do.
Not you evil free marketeers. They care about poor people. It's so insulting. I remember people building gas stations. And individuals and companies took risks to build that. And you had to go and buy the fuel from them. So now the gas stations are going to be built by people who aren't using that fuel in order.
It doesn't matter, because if I was going to bankroll whatever idea you had, regardless of the risk, you may not be as careful if it was your money invested that you had to do, and that's what they're doing.
People say, well, Colorado, it's not Chicago, it's not Illinois, it's not a corrupt place. No, it is more corrupt. It's more corrupt because that type of cronyism is right out in the open. You've got environmentalists ripping off poor people, shoving money into the stockholders of large energy companies.
I mean,
that's wrong.
Is that things you can't make up, and it's really unfortunate that so many people are going to see especially in this economy. I mean, there's not a great time for this, but I can't think of a worse time than right now to say, I know things are tough, I know you're struggling, but we need you to just pay a little bit more because this guy's second car needs more places to fuel up.
All right, real fast. Anything else that you think is going to be a burning issue?
Huge issue I want everyone to be aware of is that there's an effort now, and they're out there talking. Again, there's no legislation yet, but they want to take money from high-performing charter schools and send it into the big kind of education pot to be spread around to other schools. Because, as you know, there's a lot of schools closed right now, but there's a lot of schools that are open, that are functioning, that kids are going to, because there's a lot of kids who need in-school instruction. And John, you're fighting a righteous battle for your son. And you know better than anyone the importance of getting your kid a quality education. And there's folks out there who say, well, that's not fair. So we want to take funding from those schools
that are open,
that serve a lot of low-income communities across Denver, across other parts of the state, and do an extremely good job. Because, I mean, every parent knows every kid's different. Some kids in a traditional brick-and-mortar public school, they do great. They're doing fine. Others kids are going to function better in a charter school, and some, in a homeschool setting, and all these options. And it's the government saying, well, we're going to punish these schools over here because we don't really like them and like what they're doing, and that's wildly, wildly unfair.
Well, they don't want the competition, and as you said, I'm fighting to get my son who has Down syndrome to get the education he needs that was denied during COVID. And
it doesn't work over Zoom.
It does not work over Zoom. Hey, people want to get more information about AFP Colorado.
Absolutely. So go to americansforprosperity.org. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. Get involved. And the thing I want people to understand is that if you make your voice heard now, before the bill introduction, before the press conference, before all that, you have a greater likelihood of stopping bad legislation if you talk to them now and they say, hey, I mean, I worked in the Capitol for almost 7 years, and people said, you know what, my district's, no, not doing this. And if you get involved now and you make your voice heard.
Let me reiterate that. So there's something they call the stakeholder process, which is basically the nice way of saying, two wolves and a sheep get together to decide what's for dinner.
They take a vote.
And they take a vote. And what happens is these things get decided before the bill drops. 100%. They know if it's going to pass. They know who's going to vote for it. They know what support it has. Otherwise, they wouldn't drop the bill the way they did or put it in that committee. And so once you see the bill, the chances of stopping that bad legislation is so much harder than stopping it before they lay it on the table.
Yeah, and it's I had reporters call me last year and say, I can't believe you're running ads about a bill that's not introduced yet. And I said, because I don't want names on it.
Right, exactly.
I don't want to count 18 co-sponsors in the Senate and 33 in the House. I want them to, struggle and say, I can't get enough people.
Out of everything we've talked about, let me drive home that point you just made, which is if you want to stop this fee increase on your gas, if you want to save charter schools, if you want the Green New Deal not to happen, if you need to talk to your state legislator now. And let them know. Let them know. And it's just a matter of picking up the phone or writing them an email and just being honest. Say, hey, you ought to know, I am going to be pissed if you try to do this stuff.
And if you call them...
the sad thing is, if you're successful, you might never know about it because the bill might not even start.
Yeah, no, and that's one of the things that people say, well, the bill wasn't even introduced. And I'm like, that's amazing. Like, that's exactly what you want. You don't even, if you're able to put up such a huge fight to them in the beginning and they're just like, it's not even worth introduction, like that is a huge victory for taxpayers.
Right, and what's tough for people in our role is it's hard to go back to people and go, see that nothing that happened? Yeah. We did that nothing. It's hard, but it's true. That's what does it. Hey, Jesse, thanks for
having us.
If you enjoyed that conversation, by all means, click one of these other great programs. We have the best conversations with the most fascinating Coloradans. And subscribe to our channel. Just click down below and hit that little bell button too. You don't want to miss a single show.